everyone, we are trying to hit 1,000 subscribers and we really need your help. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button as we get started. If you think this story is just about a tennis player putting on a pretty dress at a party, you are about to be proven spectacularly wrong. So hit that subscribe button, settle in, and let us tell you exactly why what happened at the Linz Open Players Party is one of the most telling moments of Alex Eala's career so far, and why the details of one evening in Austria are speaking volumes about where this young woman is headed in professional tennis. Let us set the scene. The Upper Austria Ladies Linz Open is celebrating its 35th anniversary, and the tournament decided to throw a party worthy of that milestone. They called it the Alpine Player Night, and they went all out. Wine tasting, gourmet food, special performances, and in a touch that was both charming and culturally meaningful, they partnered with O Heimatwerk to provide every player with a genuine, beautifully crafted Austrian dirndl, the traditional folk dress featuring a bodice, blouse, and apron that is as much a part of Austrian identity as the Alps themselves. These are not cheap tourist costumes you pick up at an airport gift shop. These are authentic pieces of regional heritage, and the tournament was inviting its players to step into that heritage for an evening and celebrate together. And then Alex Eala walked in wearing wine red. Not a safe neutral. Not a follow-the-crowd choice. A bold, rich, unapologetic wine red dirndl that immediately drew eyes and cameras. And standing there in that color, in that room, alongside Paula Badosa and Mira Andreeva and defending champion Ekaterina Alexandrova and a collection of the WE's finest, Alex Eala looked exactly like what she is, a player who belongs in elite company and knows it. Now before we go any further, let us give you the full cast of characters in that room, because the company Eala kept that evening tells you everything about the level she is operating at right now. Paula Badosa is a former world number 2. She has won multiple WTA titles. She has competed at the absolute pinnacle of the sport and matched up against the very best players in the world at the biggest stages tennis has to offer. Mira Andreeva is the top seed at this tournament and one of the most genuinely exciting young talents the sport has produced in years. Ekaterina Alexandrova is the defending Linz champion, the woman who won this trophy the last time it was handed out. And Julia Grabher is the beloved local favorite, an Austrian player who first walked through these very doors as a wild card recipient back in 2019 and has been grinding her way up the professional ladder ever since. That is the room Alex Eala walked into. That is the company she mingled with, posed with, laughed with, and competed alongside in an Easter-themed egg and spoon race. For a player ranked 46 in the world who is still in the process of establishing herself as a permanent force on the WTA Tour, being present in that space and being entirely comfortable in it is not a small thing. It is a statement. And speaking of the egg and spoon race, yes, we absolutely have to talk about the egg and spoon race. Because it is one of those details that sounds like a throwaway footnote but is actually one of the most revealing things about who Alex Eala is as a competitor. At the Alpine Player Night, somewhere between the wine tasting and the gourmet treats, somebody decided that a group of the world's best professional tennis players should race each other with eggs balanced on spoons. A light-hearted, silly, Easter-themed challenge that most people would approach as a fun bit of entertainment between bites of food. Alex Eala treated it like a match point. She won. Alongside Austria's Sinja Kraus, Eala crossed that finish line first and claimed victory in what might be the most low-stakes competition she has entered all year. Why does that matter? Because champions do not have an off switch on their competitive instincts. It is well documented that the greatest athletes in the history of sport carried that same ferocious need to win into every single situation, no matter how trivial or inconsequential. They cannot help it. It is wired into them at a level that goes beyond strategy or preparation. When a competition is placed in front of them, they want to win it. Every single time. And here is Alex Eala, at a party, at a celebratory evening designed entirely for relaxation and enjoyment, and she zeroes in on the egg and spoon race and wins it. That is not an accident. That is character. That is the kind of competitive DNA that tournament directors and coaches and fellow players recognize and respect, because they know what it looks like when someone is built to win, and that is what it looks like. Now let us talk about what Sandra Reichel said, because the tournament director of the Linz Open did not hold back when it came to expressing what Eala's presence at this event means. Reichel called Eala unbelievable. She spoke passionately about what it means for the Philippines, for the Filipino people, for the tennis fans across an entire nation who are watching one of their own compete at this level. She welcomed Eala personally and publicly as part of the 35th anniversary celebration, describing her as someone who will own the future of this sport. And that phrase is worth stopping on, because tournament directors do not use language like that carelessly. They have seen hundreds of players come through their draws over the years. They have watched promising young talents rise and fall and disappear from the conversation. When a director of Reichel's experience looks at a player and says she will own the future, that is not a marketing line. That is a professional assessment from someone who has been watching this sport long enough to know the difference between a good player and a generational presence. The cultural dimension of this party appearance adds another layer that would be easy to overlook but absolutely should not be. Eala did not just show up, accept a dirndl, and stand awkwardly in photos. She embraced the moment. She chose her color boldly. She engaged in the traditions of the host country. She participated enthusiastically in the events of the evening. And in doing so, she demonstrated something that goes beyond tennis skill and beyond social media charisma. She demonstrated respect for the tournament, for the country, for the occasion. That kind of respect earns goodwill in professional tennis circles that can manifest in very practical ways throughout a career. Favorable scheduling. Wildcard invitations. The small advantages that tournament organizers extend to players they genuinely enjoy having at their event. These things accumulate, and over a long career they add up to something significant. It is also worth spending a moment on what it means for Eala specifically to be seen in this context, at this level, representing the Philippines. The Philippines does not have a long or deep history of producing elite professional tennis players. Eala has not just been climbing the WTA rankings, she has been charting entirely new territory for Filipino sport. She was the first player from her country to crack the top 100. She was the first to break into the top 50. Every milestone she reaches is one that no Filipino player has reached before her, and that means every party she walks into wearing a wine-red dirndl, every photo she takes alongside former world number 2s and top seeds, every egg and spoon race she wins. All of it is seen and felt by a nation that is watching her journey with the kind of devotion and intensity that only comes when a country recognizes that one of its own is doing something genuinely historic. The relationships being built in rooms like the Alpine Player Night are also worth examining carefully, because professional tennis can be an extraordinarily isolating existence. You travel constantly. You compete individually. You spend weeks away from home, moving from country to country, living out of a suitcase, grinding through wins and losses in front of crowds who are often rooting for someone else. In that environment, the relationships you build with fellow players become part of what keeps you grounded, motivated, and mentally healthy. And Eala spent an evening at a 35th anniversary party building exactly those relationships with exactly the kinds of players that matter most. Paula Badosa has navigated the highest levels of this sport. She knows what it takes to compete at the top, she knows how to handle pressure, and she knows the landscape of professional tennis in ways that only experience can teach. Having access to that knowledge, even informally over a glass of wine and a plate of food at a tournament party, is genuinely valuable. Mira Andreeva is a peer, a young player navigating the same era of tennis, facing many of the same challenges, working toward many of the same goals. Building a connection with Andreeva is building a connection with someone who will be part of the conversation in women's tennis for the next decade. These are not trivial social interactions. These are the foundations of professional relationships that can define careers. Now let us zoom out and place all of this party evening context alongside what was actually at stake on the court. Because Eala arrived at Linz with an opening round match against Julia Grabher, the Austrian home favorite, the local hero, the player who received her first WTA Tour opportunity at this very tournament 7 years ago. Grabher was going to walk into that match with every conceivable home advantage. The crowd, the familiar conditions, the emotional charge of competing in front of family and friends and compatriots. And Eala was going to walk in as the visiting player in every sense of the word. The player everyone expected the crowd to be cheering against. The opponent standing between the home favorite and a feel-good local story. And then 90% of the tickets were purchased by Eala fans. Filipino supporters who organized themselves, traveled to Austria, flooded into that stadium and turned the entire thing upside down before a single ball was struck. The home court advantage evaporated. The crowd that Grab Her had counted on became a wall of noise for the player on the other side of the net. And Eala walked into that atmosphere, the atmosphere she had partly created through her own magnetism, and played like someone entirely undisturbed by any of it. She won 6-4, 6-3. Clean, efficient, authoritative. She dispatched the home favorite in straight sets, picked up over 15,000 euros in prize money and a stack of valuable ranking points, and moved on to the next round where Yelena Ostapenko awaited. And that is where the full picture of this Linz story comes into focus. The party and the tennis are not separate narratives. They are the same narrative. They are both telling you the same thing about Eala in April of 2026. She walks into elite spaces and she belongs there. She walks into challenging competitive situations and she rises to them. She wears a wine-red dirndl in a room full of tennis superstars and she carries herself with the composure of someone who has been in those rooms her entire life. She steps onto a clay court in a foreign country in front of a crowd that largely came for her, and she delivers a professional, no-fuss, straight-sets victory over the home favorite. The confidence in both settings is the same confidence. The comfort in both settings is the same comfort. And the competitive fire that wins an egg and spoon race at a party is the same competitive fire that wins 6-4, 6-3 under pressure. The broader significance of Eala's position at this stage of her career is something that deserves to be stated clearly. She arrived at the Linz Open ranked 46 in the world after a season that had already included deep runs at multiple major events. She reached the semifinals of the ASB Classic. She made quarterfinal appearances in Manila, Abu Dhabi, and Dubai. She reached the round of 16 at Indian Wells after beating Diana Yastremska in a match that lasted nearly 3 hours. At the Miami Open, she made the round of 16 before bowing out. Every one of those results represents progress. Every one of those results represents a player who is building something real and building it consistently, not riding a single lucky week into the spotlight and then fading back into the crowd. The WTA 500 level is where careers are made or stalled. Winning a title at this tier vaults your ranking significantly, opens doors to the biggest events without needing wildcards, and announces you as a player capable of going the distance in a week-long professional tournament. That is the prize that was on the table in Linz, and that is the prize Eala was pursuing alongside the memories of a beautiful party and an egg and spoon race victory. The draw was brutally tough with Ostapenko, and Lee, and Andreeva all presenting enormous challenges. But the fact that Eala is even in the conversation about winning at this level is remarkable for a player who was outside the top 100 as recently as a year ago. The story of Eala in the first months of 2026 is ultimately a story about arrival. Not arrival in the sense of a single explosive moment, though there have been plenty of those. But arrival in the deeper, more permanent sense of a player who has established herself as a fixture at the top of the game. She is at the parties. She is on the biggest courts. She is in the draws that matter. She is being praised by tournament directors who have spent decades watching this sport. She is being celebrated by fans who cross continents to watch her play. And she is responding to all of it with the calm, focused energy of someone who always knew this was where she belonged. Sandra Reichel said it when she called Eala unbelievable and welcomed her as a player who will own the future. Tommy Haas said it when he watched record crowds pour into Indian Wells for every match she played. James Blake said it when he made sure she was on center court in Miami. And the egg and spoon race said it in the most delightfully unexpected way of all. Because even when the competition is silly and low stakes and happening between glasses of wine at a 35th anniversary party in Austria, Eala wants to win. She focuses. She competes. She crosses the finish line first. And then she picks up her racket, walks onto the clay, and does it all over again for real. The wine-red dirndl was stunning. The company was elite. The race was won. And the journey is very far from over. Now it is your turn. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think Eala is going to win her first WTA Tour level title before the end of the clay season? Can she go deep in Stuttgart and Madrid and make the kind of run that puts her name in the Grand Slam conversation for real? And does the egg and spoon race tell you something about her competitive character that the tennis results do not already make obvious? We read every single comment and we want to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button right now because it makes a genuine difference to this channel. Share this with every tennis fan you know and every Filipino who needs to hear this story. And if you are not yet subscribed, hit that button and turn on notifications because the Eala story is nowhere near its final chapter and we are going to cover every